Let
This
me start
conference will
sharing the
now be
screen.
recorded.
Let me share it. Hello, are you able to see the sharing?
Yep.
Okay. So, so basically we have we have gone through the job designs, right? We have something called context here. And so basically the context are something that we use certain variables throughout your project or throughout your job. So so that is where we create our context variables. If you want to create some context globally and use it in the different jobs, then you could create it here, saying like create context group, and you can name the group as my context for project one. So, so this would ask you what are the variables that you want to create. So so that is when you wanted to create them globally. When it comes to the job, you could have the same similar screen here where you can create your context. Like you could say your context as, one second, let us take one. Let us change the workspace. Mm, There we go. So basically have one of our job here, the map. So for this job, let us create a few context variables. where you can define something globally and you can use it within your job.
Okay.
So we did inner joins and the rejects. Say we have defined the country as, okay, country equals this value and segment equals this value. Let us play around with this data, saying that notepad. So now say that this is a string value that we are always comparing, but when we have to, when say for instance we need to change the country name, so it's not recommended, like it's always you go into the code and apply your filters or apply your logic. So it should be controlled via some sort of configuration, or it should be controlled via a configuration file, or you can call it as a parameters file. So the control can be given like this. So say, okay, say for instance here we have a context, just create a context variable called country, and the country values, say the country is this. Oh, so now this context variable is created. So having, in order to use this variable in any of our job, all that we have to do is go into the job, say context dot, and if you see control spacebar, it would list out all the context variables that you have created. If context dot country dot equals our row1 dot country, then we are filtering out these values here. So similarly this control can be given, excuse me, okay, no errors. So you can see only 140 records here, like which is so for one country we had like 140 records, and we could use similar context variables for any sort of operations. And when you come here, you have a checkbox here. When you click on this checkbox, this would say like it, it would ask you for a value. It would ask you for a value at the runtime. Say you have enabled this option, and it will ask you what the prompt should be. So the prompt we can say define like, please enter the country name. So, and then when you trigger it, see what would happen. It would ask for the, please enter the country name. Now that we have set it like the default as United States, it would pick up that value. Alternatively, you could pick any other country as, say for instance, Germany or France. Germany. When you say okay, only Germany would be, printed out. But if you try and say India, which is not in our list, it wouldn't have any rows that is flowing through the our second flow. So this is how you can use these context variables. And these variables, if you define it within the job, it is you can call them as the local variables. But if you define them globally here, you could define like a context group, saying that my global context, and then you can add them here. 1 2 3 4 5 is one is you can say for country, you can say a segment, you could say unit value, you could say gross net amount, integer. So long this one, your unit value is a float. So this is what we have defined now. So these can be taken at the runtime, or we can give them a default value saying that country is France, segment is government, say unit value we consider like 5.8, net amount let us put it as 100 USD, and say finish. So once this context is defined globally here, either we can drag and drop it onto here, it will populate at the context within our job or our joblet, or you could attach it by this option. Are you able to see this option here? This option, it will list out all the contexts. So if you want
Mm-hmm.
to use certain variables from that group, you can only use certain variables from that group. If you want to use all the variables from that group, yes, you could use all of them. And now you won't be able to edit any of these when you're calling it. So these are defined globally, and the values will remain globally the same. See, you won't even be able to ask for a prompt at the runtime. So the hard coding of any of the context variables is not recommended. We would read these values from a file in our real time. So that would be a better bet for us, and we'll go through those examples as well. So with having these context variables, let us create one use case. I want to list out the countries. Say I want to list out the countries. The joinings that you're aware of. Okay. Let us add the filter, like having like go to expression editor. It would open up one pub. So say context dot country dot equals row one dot country or context dot context dot. It won't show up anything because it's a case sensitive. It should be like always the context should be written as a small c equals row one dot segment row one dot segment, or you could say that units sold row one dot units sold is greater than context dot unit value, or you could say row one dot sale price, uh, sale sale price is less than context dot gross net amount. So based on these conditions, we are trying to filter out the data. Like either we need a France data, or the segment is what we have defined the segment as government. It's government. Okay. So let us connect. We have some compilation issues. Elena, close it. Row 3. I think we have defined. I think we have defined it incorrectly. Row 1, row 1. Unit sold, sale price. row one dot country as well. There are some spell checks that we need to be very careful of. hmm Now I think we are good on this part now. hmm Discount bandwidth. Okay. The discount previously we were getting it from the input lookup. That could be the reason apply. Okay. And clear. Execute this. So there we go. So we have all the 700 records with this combination. So we could play around with this combination instead of or do a and.
So what's the
And
advantage of using context variables instead of what we were doing previously?
sorry, just come again.
What's the advantage of using context variables?
The advantage of using the context variables is the reusability, uh, like the reusability and the control. Like, see, every time we can't go to the code and do some hard code changes, right? Say if you are filtering out for, let us take a real time scenario like, so this year I want the entire data for the first fiscal half of uh, I mean, I need the data or the sales for the first fiscal half. So once this fiscal half is closed, then I want to have the data for the next fiscal half, which is the fiscal half, which is for the H1 and the H2. So at that time, what you're going to do is you're not going to literally get into the job and change the code, right? So what we are going to do is we are going to control it via one of the parameter file. Say for example, now you are seeing that it is being hard coded. This is what we are doing currently at this point of time is as good as hard coding. But this whole thing can be controlled using another file.
Okay.
So T context load is the one component wherein we could load. I wanted to take you through this example at a later point. So we can have an input file somewhere sitting on our machine, say like desktop. Say I have one file, say it's a notepad. Where is this notepad? Okay, say this file is context or parameter. We're gonna context or parameter, and this file here we would load it to the context. So what would happen is this file what we have created on our desktop, say for instance country, is we can define it as France. Segment, we can define it as government, and we could say unit value as 5.5 or something. So these parameters could be defined it here instead of we defining in the job. So in the job what we are going to do in our real case scenario, we are not going to hard code any values like this. All that we are going to do is we are going to default it to null. Yes, Okay. So now when we load this context, these values from the file will be read and loaded into these context variables at the runtime. So it's always whenever you want to control it, you would be able to control it with a parameter file that is defined on your on your desktop or on your local machine. Any
Okay,
questions
that
on
makes
that part?
sense.
Hmm?
No, that clears it up.
Yeah. So I wanted to take you through to this example at a later point of time because this might consume a little bit of time. So I just wanted to get through to a use case and see how these contexts are being read within the job and how does it behave. So so this is as good as extracting the data from a file, loading it to your context, and again loading it back to the job. Any further questions on this? And I'm not quite sure if you have followed the previous classes or if you wanted a recap, we can do a recap for one session tomorrow before we go into some real stuff.
I've been following along, so I think I'm okay.
Is it? Mm-hmm. That meeting ఉందని చెప్పు. So any questions on today's topic?
That was the only question I had.
Okay, so the thing is, how about you guys attending the classes at 11:30 IST, which is like 2 p.m. your CST, right? Like like the one session we did the last time.
That should work. I think every day except for
Because we have
Wednesday.
some, yeah, because we have some issues at our workplaces. So I was getting occupied, I mean, during this hour, like from 7 from your time CST 9 till 11 or something like that. So if you could make it at 2 p.m. CST, I would really appreciate that.
Yeah, I'll talk with Jason and we'll send you an email and let you know if that works.
Yeah, yeah, please do. So if there are no further questions, then let us wrap it for today. And please come up with any questions that you might have or any clarifications from the previous classes. That would encourage me a little bit as well.
Okay, sounds good.
Right? Okay. Then, yeah. Thanks for your time, Jason and Mitch.
You're
So,
welcome.
we'll catch up tomorrow if it's okay, like 2 CST,
Okay, sounds good.
2 p.m. CST. All right. Okay. All right then. Thank you. Have a nice day ahead.